All right, everyone, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming on behalf of the Alice family. For those who do not know who I am, my name is Shane Kuntz. I'm the firstborn grandchild of Alice and Richard Buttinger. And I've been given the honor today to present to you the eulogy for Alice. So Grandma has always demanded that her funeral be a happy one, as it's a celebration of her life, and therefore we should treat it as a celebration. Grandma also loved to laugh at a good story, so I hope I can provide the perfect mixture of celebration and laughter that my grandma would want. Alice Mary Hamilton was born on May 8, 1943 in Glasgow, Scotland. She was the first of two children born to John and Sarah Hamilton. John and Sarah's son, Alec Hamilton, followed 3 years later, and Alec often referred to Alice as his big wee sister. Growing up, Alice was an avid reader and always had her nose in a book. She was given chores to do around the house, which, much to her mother's frustration, took Alice much longer than normal because she would do the chores with one hand and have a book in the other. Sarah, however, never scolded Alice because she considered reading as learning. From a very young age, Alice always knew that she was going to be a teacher. After obtaining her teacher certificate in Glasgow, her first job was as a teacher at an all-boys school where she was assigned a classroom of 42 boys. The playground was on the roof of the school and was completely made of concrete. She was very proud of the fact that she could keep all of these boys in line, even when they would bring her live mice and snakes in an attempt to scare her. Alice always remembered her first teaching job of 42 boys. In fact, I'm certain everyone in this room has heard this story once or twice. One day in the late 1960s, after obtaining their teacher certificates, Alice and her friend Mary Morgan were riding atop a double-decker bus in downtown Glasgow when suddenly they noticed a billboard advertising a shortage of teachers in Canada. And as such, interested teachers from the United Kingdom would be placed on a 2-year contract to go over to Canada and essentially fill these shortages until more local teachers became available. Alice and Mary pondered over the idea and eventually decided it was a great opportunity and decided to give it a shot. They were accepted, and both young Scots arrived in the booming metropolis of Lake Lenore, Saskatchewan in the summer of 1967. Alice has maintained throughout her life that although there was an obvious size difference between Glasgow and Lake Lenore, the smaller one was just as busy as the larger one. To Alice, this small town was unlike anything she had ever seen before, but she was only supposed to be here for 2 years, right? Well, it turns out she would never leave. When Alice arrived in Canada, she roomed and boarded with Emil and Marcy Gerwing. While there, Marcy taught her all about gardening, cooking, baking, and just the Canadian culture in general. Her friend Mary boarded at another residence in town, and the two were basically inseparable while they adjusted to their new life in a new country. On their first Christmas in Canada, the two of them joined the choir at the church and had just finished singing for midnight mass when they were informed they had to get up early to sing at mass the next morning. Alice was a bit concerned and said she wasn't sure she would get up on time. Mary told her not to worry, as she was certain Emil would knock her up in the morning. Now in Scotland, knock up meant wake up. The two quickly learned that some normal terms in Scotland were definitely not normal in Canada. This was further proven when Alice once told her classroom of grade 3 and 4 students in Lake Lenore to take out their rubbers. She meant erasers. In early 1968, Alice met a local boy by the name of Richard Buttinger. They began to meet with each other occasionally and then more and more often. Soon afterwards, in the fall of 1968, they became engaged, and on the extremely scorching hot day of December 28, 1968, Alice and Richard were married in Lake Lenore. Now, Alice and Richard were truly the definition of opposites attract. She was European, he was North American. She was short, he was tall. She was loud and fiery, he was quiet and reserved. But what truly kept them together for a solid 55 years, she told him what to do and he did it. I can only say that last part because she's not physically here to smack you over the head. The two were blessed with 4 wonderful daughters, Terry, born in 1970, Sheila in 1971, Trina in 1975, and Stephanie in 1981. In the early 1990s, Terry and Sheila each met and married Lyle and Lauren Kuntz, 2 very rambunctious brothers from the Anaheim area. Now I can see why Grandma was an avid churchgoer and Grandpa started losing his hair. The 90s also brought great joy to Alice and Richard as they were blessed with their first 3 grandchildren, Shane born in 1995, Amanda in 1996, and Emily in 1998. In 2000, Alice and Richard became grandparents for the 4th and 5th time as Kristen and Samantha were born. 2000 also marked the year that their 3rd born daughter, Trina, married Brad Miller of Wilkie, Saskatchewan. And you remember earlier how I said opposites attract? This time Trina was the tall, quiet one and Brad was the short, loud one. Between 2002 and 2004, 4 more grandchildren, Alicia, Michael, Matthew, and Megan, were welcomed into their lives. Trina and Brad then decided that 9 grandchildren wasn't enough for Grandma and Grandpa to spoil, so they rounded out their family with the births of Haley and Braden in 2006 and 2009. Now, with Grandma spending the vast majority of her teaching career as the grade 5-6 homeroom teacher at Anaheim School, and me being from Anaheim, I had the privilege of not only seeing my grandma at school every day, but also having her as my homeroom teacher for 2 years. After moving to Anaheim School, she quickly adopted the name of Mrs. B by her students. One thing I can tell you for certain is that when we were in school, I was not her grandchild, I was her student. And that went for my siblings as well. That's one thing everyone loved about her, she did not pick favorites. She treated all of her students with the same amount of respect regardless of her outside relationship with them, and disciplined everyone the same way as well. My siblings and I never got special treatment for being her grandchildren, and she always held us accountable for our own actions when we did something devious at school. I myself can vaguely remember one instance where, in grade 3 or 4 as an 8-year-old, I was sent to the principal's office for misbehaving. The school principal at the time was a tall man with a deep, booming voice. As I'm waiting outside the office for a few minutes, he opens the door and tells me to come in. To my absolute shock and horror, my grandma is sitting in one of the chairs in his office with a stern look on her face and her arms crossed. Believe me when I say it was not the principal I was scared of in that moment. I was also very thankful that I do not have an R in my name for her to roll. If you ask anyone who knew her closely, what is the one thing you'll always remember about Alice, someone would definitely tell you it would be her outrageous quotes. Her most memorable quote, at least to her grandchildren, would be one that always made the hair on the backs of our necks stand up when we heard her shout from another room, "By the holy high ho!" Grandma would come stomping into whatever room we were in at the time and proceed to lecture us for the next 10 minutes. If you ask one of her many former students what her favorite thing to say in the classroom was, a lot of them would say without hesitation, "Oh, flippin' heck." This was normally muttered when she was corrected by a student at school, mainly whenever she accidentally made a spelling or grammatical mistake while writing notes on the board. Her students were always quick to point out these mistakes to her, which I'm sure you can imagine how much Alice enjoyed that. In one such instance, Alice was handing quizzes back to the class that she had previously graded. One student, after combing through her quiz, realized she was unsure of why a question was marked incorrect, and she challenged Alice about it. Upon looking at the quiz further, Grandma realized she had made a mistake, and the answer was actually correct. She muttered under her breath, "Oh, flip," as she reluctantly grabbed the quiz back to correct her error. The student looked Grandma dead in the eye and replied, "Hey, Mrs. B, you forgot the in heck." The relationship that Grandma had with her many students throughout the years was absolutely unmatched. After a long and successful teaching career, Alice decided to retire in 2008. However, she quickly found out that being at home with Richard all day drove her crazy, so she went back to teaching as an occasional substitute. This still allowed her the freedom to spend more time with her beloved grandchildren, who were now getting older and becoming more involved in sports and extracurricular activities. She loved to be on the sidelines cheering them on in everything that they did. On May 24th, 2023, Alice moved into Bethany Pioneer Village in Middle Lake, where this would be her home until the end of her life. She had the best care that we could have possibly asked for. Shortly after moving in, my mom Terry went to go visit her and commented to Alice that she looked so tired. She replied with, "Of course I'm exhausted. What do you expect? It takes me until 3 in the morning to get everyone organized around here, and I don't know how this place functioned before I got here." That sounds like Grandma, doesn't it? On September 18th, 2023, Alice's youngest daughter, Stephanie, passed away suddenly, but we as the family decided not to burden Alice with that news. I'd like to share with you all a conversation had between a nurse at Bethany and my grandma on Monday, May 27th, 2024. Grandma was particularly out of sorts on this day, and the nurse took her back to her room to calm her down. They started talking about her former students and her family. When asked about her children, Grandma said she had 4 beautiful daughters, Terry, Sheila, Trina, and Stephanie. The nurse asked Grandma, "And which of your daughters was the last to visit you?" Grandma replied very intently, "Well, Stephanie visited me the other day. It was the most amazing thing. It was like an out-of-this-world experience." Grandma passed away peacefully 3 days later on May 30th, ironically 8 months to the day after Stephanie's funeral on September 30th. We truly believe that her guardian angel, Stephanie, called her home that day. Grandma, from your loving family, friends, and everyone else who was lucky enough to know you, thank you for everything you have done for us. Thank you for teaching us all your valuable life lessons that we will never forget. Thank you for your witty Scottish remarks, your words of encouragement, and for all the precious time that we spent together over the years. We love you and miss you so very much, and we can't wait to see you again. There's shortbread somewhere here that you guys can feel free to have. It was made with the same recipe that Grandma used to make her shortbread. As well, there will be an open mic for those that want to come up and share any stories about Alice. And as well, we welcome everyone here to come to the bowling alley on Main Street in Lake Lenore, where festivities will resume. As Gloria mentioned before the eulogy, you will all see a wine glass in front of you filled with some of Alice's favorite red wine. I ask you all to please raise your glasses and join me in giving a toast to the memory of our beloved Alice Buttinger. Thank you.